What's going on, guys? LordKing here again, back with another UFC preview show. Now, as you can see on my screen, we have UFC 211. Now, this has been hailed as the card of the year. I know you're probably thinking already, how the hell is it the card of the year when we're only just started May? Well, basically, the card is so damn good, well, the main event at least, is that people are kind of saying it could be tipped to be the card of the year, or one of the best ones of the year. So what I'm going to do is, as I do normally if you see my previous ones, I'm going to go through this. I'm not too sure how long this is going to take because we have, again, all the 5 main events and a few on the undercard are ridiculously good. So we'll see how it goes, to be honest. But I'm not going to rush it, but we'll just go through it normally. Before I go anything into UFC, though, I wanted to mention we have this pretty big sort of boxing event this weekend. I'm not going to be going this into detail, but I just wanted to make people aware that this is going to be free on BT Sport after Cage Warriors. So Cage Warriors is on at 9 on BT Sport, and then this is going to be on at 2 AM on BT Sport as well. So we can watch that for free in the UK. In America, I believe it's on maybe on HBO. I'm not 100% sure of that. This event is going to be pretty big. It's on Cinco de Mayo, so all the Mexicans are going to be watching it. Canelo Alvarez versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Chavez Jr., most people know who the original Chavez is. This gentleman, Chavez Jr., he's a hell of a lot bigger than Canelo, so the speculation has arisen where if he can manage to make the weight, because this is almost a new weight for him and he's very, very bad at making weight, which is relatively known, but if he can make the weight, then it could be an incredibly almost good match to see. If you haven't watched the Max Kellerman sort of sit-down interview with them, then do go try and watch that. It's also quite interesting. One thing I did notice which was quite cool about this Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is because he's notoriously known for missing weight, he actually has a clause in his contract for every pound that he weighs over the limit, he'll be fined $1 million, which I'm assuming will be out of his fight purse. So keep an eye out for that, guys. But let's move into the actual UFC event. So as you can see, like always, the same thing as before. The undercard and the fight pass, I won't really mention them unless it's something that I truly think is something that takes my eye a lot. It was this Sherman versus this new gentleman, Dimitri, but I didn't actually want to go over it because I'm not actually too sure on what's happening, where the UFC actual website has this Chase Sherman versus Pobres Zets, I believe that may be how you pronounce it. But then when we actually go on to UFC 211, we have people pulling out of the fight, and there's all different things. Pobres Zets was removed, undisclosed reasons. He's now replaced by Rashad Coulter. So they have Rashad Coulter, but then the UFC has him still in. So I'm going to ignore that. But we'll go into the fights that I think are good. So we have Polo Reyes versus James Vick is the very first one, which I'm going to do very briefly. I think James Vick, he could win this. I've got his record up here. He's 30 years old, but he's one of the bigger gentlemen, to be honest. He's, for a lightweight, he fights at 155 pounds and he's 6'3". So we're talking a big sort of customer when we think of, people say Conor McGregor's big for the featherweight and lightweight division, and he's about 5'9". Some people will say 5'8", but between 5'8" and 5'10". So this gentleman's 6'3", which is absolutely huge. So it's quite an interesting sort of thing to watch. He's just come off a win against Abel Trujillo, submission by Darce choke, which is a very, very good a very good win to have. And he's only lost to Beneil Dariush, which is an incredible fighter. So nothing to be ashamed of there. I shall be taking James Vick in this fight. Moving on, we have Krzysztof Jotko versus Dave Branch. Now, Jotko we can go into Jotko first. Actually, relatively youngish still, 27 from Poland, 6'1". But now the best part is his record is pretty damn good, to be honest. He's fought in the UFC quite a few times now, only one loss to Magnus Sedenblad, and he's beaten some good customers. He's got Scott Askin, Brad Scott, McCrory, and Thales Leites. So Thales Leites, I think, being his biggest sort of win. But other than that, he's only ever lost once, so he's 19-1, which is a very good record, having only lost once in the UFC as well, which, again, is incredibly good. Now, he should be going against David Branch. Now, the thing with David Branch is, this gentleman was actually in the UFC before, but then released. As you can see, he's a fair bit older, he's 35. But he actually was the middleweight and the light heavyweight champion of World Series Fighting Organization. So now, if you aren't really too sure of this organization, it's almost like a rival company for the UFC, to be honest. It's not on the level of UFC, but it's one of the bigger sort of MMA organizations, not as big as the UFC, probably not as big as Bellator either. But he's basically been absolutely smashing it over there, and he's kind of earned his comeback to the UFC. And as you can see, his record is pretty damn good, having only lost to Gerald Harris, I'm not massively too sure of the UFC 116, which is a hell of a long time ago. Rousimar Palhares, if you guys are aware, you may have seen videos online of the gentleman in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu matches or in the UFC when he fought. He submitted people, but then almost refused to let go. He had the you'll be able to find it if you Google his name or YouTube his name, you'll find videos of Rousimar Palhares submitting someone, but then not letting go, and the referee calls it off, and he's got fined before and banned and stuff like that. And then he obviously lost to Anthony Johnson as well. Anthony Johnson, as I'm sure you guys know, one of the hardest hitters in the UFC maybe ever. So again, these losses aren't really something to be too ashamed of. And he's got some quite good wins over Jesse Taylor, Villafort, Macales, Lewis Taylor, Okami as well. So this is going to be good. He's on a long win streak. He's coming back into the UFC against a good customer in Jotko. So this could be a good fight. I think I'm going to take David Branch in this one simply because I kind of like the look of how he's coming into it off a very, very big confidence boost. Chas Skelly versus Jason Knight I'm going to miss, but now this has potential to be the fight of the night. Eddie Alvarez versus Dustin Poirier. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys are thinking, Eddie Alvarez, where do I know that name from if you're not big fans of the UFC? Eddie Alvarez is the gentleman that Conor McGregor TKO'd, whatever you want to say, in 2 rounds in the New York card on UFC 205. So you're probably thinking, how the hell has he gone from fighting Conor McGregor on the main event, the main fight in the main event, to then going down to the main event of the prelim cards against Dustin Poirier? Well, I think he basically wanted to fight and wanted to try and put his name back into the mix of how he's gonna get his next title shot again. So I'm sure you guys all know he was the former UFC lightweight champion. He's getting on a little bit now, 33, but in MMA terms, 33 isn't too old, to be honest. There's a hell of a lot of people who are champions who are older, to be honest, like the likes of Bisping and stuff. So it's not too old. He's still got a hell of a lot of fight left in him. Now, if we go actually onto his record, if you guys aren't aware, he has some good hands. He beat Rafael dos Santos via TKO, which some people claim is almost a lucky sort of TKO, but he showed a hell of a lot of grit in that fight. But Eddie Alvarez is known as one of the grittiest sort of grinding fighters that maybe he's ever lived. He in Bellator beforehand and in the UFC. His style is he'll stand and trade with someone with hands, but then if he can get a takedown or grind them up against the fence, he will do so. And then he's also come back. He's been on the downside of fights many times before and come back. So this has potential to be an incredibly good sort of fight. We then have Dustin Poirier. Now, Dustin Poirier, a little bit younger, 28 years old. Also another gentleman who Conor McGregor has actually beaten. This was during Conor McGregor's sort of rise to fame. He beat Dustin Poirier in very, very good fashion. Dustin Poirier, we have his losses again to some pretty damn good people: Danny Castillo, Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, Cub Swanson, Conor McGregor obviously, and Michael Johnson. The Michael Johnson one was quite a vicious sort of TKO, was quite a vicious KO, like a straight dead KO. But again, he seems to have bounced back. He had a back and forward fight with Jim Miller at UFC 208. I think he won, but it was again a very, very good back. I mean, I think Dustin Poirier did actually win the fight, so he did, but it was a very back and forward fight, and he won Fight of the Night for that as well. So it shows both of these guys, Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier, can trade back and forward, and it's going to be a hell of an interesting one to watch. Let's move into the next. Onto the main card, we now have Henry Cejudo versus Sergio Pettis. Now, if you guys are unaware, Henry Cejudo is probably known as, well, maybe the best wrestler in MMA. His wrestling is absolutely phenomenal. Well, to put it into perspective, he's won a gold medal at the Olympics. It may have been the 2008 Olympics. I'm not 100% sure on that, but we can actually check that. But his wrestling is some of the most phenomenal stuff we've ever seen. He took Demetrius Johnson down with ease. He obviously lost that fight, but he took him down with ease. Yeah, the Beijing Olympics. So his last fights he came off of, he's lost 2 in a row to Demetrius Johnson. That was one of the best finishes by Demetrius Johnson we've seen in a while. But his fight against Joseph Benavidez, I thought he won that. So I don't think there's anything to be almost ashamed of, to be honest. And he will be going against Sergio Pettis, which is Anthony Pettis' younger brother. So again, they both have that sort of high-flying taekwondo style. And Anthony Pettis' younger brother, Sergio Pettis, he's got 3 wins. He's an upcoming sort of contender. I believe he's only 20-something. He's 23, so this kid has a hell of a lot of pretty much fight in him. Now, we can actually look almost at some closer sort of stats here for Henry Cejudo Pettis. Henry Cejudo with 10-2, 15-2, KOs, TKOs. So Henry Cejudo, even though he's a wrestler, he has got that sort of stand-up power in his hands. Both similar decisions. The height is relatively similar. Reach, Sergio Pettis has a little bit of a longer one, and again that could be quite dangerous with those sort of taekwondo kicks as mentioned. But obviously the leg reach is relatively similar. The taekwondo sort of style I meant, where they're kind of in and out, dashing in and out, not necessarily standing in the pocket and trading the whole time. Significant strikes, they're pretty similar. Accuracy pretty similar. The amount absorbed, again, it's all very, very similar. When it comes down to the actual grappling, Henry Cejudo should dominate this almost every time. Again, as you can see, the stats aren't necessarily the most convincing sort of stuff where they're relatively similar, but Henry Cejudo should dominate the grappling, and if anything, he'll probably want to take it to the ground as well. So watch out for Henry Cejudo sort of wrestling, and watch out for Sergio Pettis' stand-up, but again, anyone can win these sort of fights. I'm just going to go back to Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier very quickly to look at their actual sort of size-ups. KO, TKO, 61-48. Eddie Alvarez has got quite big hands in the sense he can throw punches, and so he can take them as well, but he can give it a hell of a lot if he wants to. Both relatively similar on reach. Poirier seems to be a bit bigger in stature in that sort of sense, and then he seems to be a bit more imposing like that. He's got better striking as it's told by the stats, almost overall and defensively as well. Takedowns, as I mentioned, Eddie Alvarez is a grinder, so his takedown average is relatively high. His accuracy is pretty good as well, and his defense is great as well. But again, MMA, absolutely anything can happen. So we've covered the Henry Cejudo, Sergio Pettis. I'm going to personally, I think Henry Cejudo may grind this one out. I think he may go for quite a good wrestling sort of base and do quite well. But again, the stand-up battle will be quite interesting between them. On to Frankie Edgar versus Yair Rodriguez. Now, this could be one of the most interesting fights of the night, simply because, well, Frankie Edgar is, I'm sure you guys may know, he held the lightweight title. I believe he beat BJ Penn for the title, and then he also fought Jose Aldo twice for the featherweight title, and he's basically trying to get this featherweight title now. He's 35 years old, but he trains with Mark Henry, so he has this very, very sort of awkwardy style of, very, very overall style of fighting, where he introduces wrestling, his boxing, his kicks, leg kicks, everything. He's an incredibly good fighter, and he's great, really good to watch, to be honest. So as you can see, 21-5. His 5 losses have come to some of the best people in the game. He lost to Grain Maynard, and then he kind of avenged that, a draw and then a win via KO. He's lost to Benson Henderson twice, one by split decision, and Jose Aldo twice. Nothing to be ashamed of there. He's got some big wins over Chad Mendes, Uriah Faber, obviously BJ Penn as mentioned, and most recently Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens, known as one of the hardest hitters in the featherweight division, he pretty much just nullified him completely and just got a unanimous decision. It was an incredible performance, to be honest. Some people called it boring, but I just thought it was a very, very impressive performance, showing how diverse he was, and basically just won a very, very convincing fight. As you can see now, he is fighting Yair Rodriguez. If you guys aren't aware, please do Google or YouTube this name, Yair Rodriguez. He has some of the most phenomenal kicks and stand-up style I think we've all seen in the UFC. He's, again, one of these taekwondo sort of black belts, and the sort of thing, the techniques he throws just have never been seen. We don't see this sort of stuff in the UFC, and this guy does it, and he knocks people out with it as well. So it's very, very entertaining to watch. He came through the Ultimate Fighter. I believe he won it actually. I'm not checking. Yeah, so he reached the finals. He did incredibly well, and he did very, very well up until the Alex Caceres fight, where it was a split decision. Obviously, you see another split decision against Charles Rosa, but after that was relatively convincing. Then the Alex Caceres fight was quite back and forth. I thought he did win this one. I thought it was definitely to Yair Rodriguez, but they obviously got a split decision, one fight of the night as well. Then most recently, his obvious win against BJ Penn, which was one of the hardest things to watch as an MMA fan, watching a legend such as BJ Penn just get absolutely destroyed like he did. He lost by TKO, and it was quite hard to watch. Almost the changing of the guard, where this young sort of, as they call him, El Pantera, the Panther sort of thing, he came and just took BJ Penn and just demolished him, to be honest. But he's such an exciting fighter. He's so incredible to watch. So now this is going to be his first real test, having won against Alex Caceres and then BJ Penn, going against Frankie Edgar, who is absolutely no slouch. He may be ranked number 3 in the division, maybe even higher, ranked number 2 in the featherweight division. So he's that top tier contender after the likes of McGregor, Aldo, and this is Frankie Edgar. So This is his biggest test. If Yair Rodriguez can win, then he'll shoot to stardom. To be honest, it'll absolutely send him up into the stars. But Frankie Edgar could do what he does best and just completely nullify this technique of someone like Yair Rodriguez, as he did with someone like Jeremy Stephens. Let's look into the very quick comparisons here. The record, Frankie Edgar's he's had a hell of a lot more experience. I don't think that's anything to. He's about 11 years old or so. I don't think we can even dispute the experience. KO, TKO, 25 to 36. Submissions, relatively similar. Decisions, again, a little bit similar. The height and the reach, now this favours Yair Rodriguez, as people expected. He's got that long sort of taekwondo build, as you can imagine with a taekwondo sort of person. So he has that. If you've seen Conor McGregor when he was a little bit younger in the UFC, and even Cage Warriors when he did those flashy more flashy kicks and not just as much just boxing, then it's almost similar to that, except Yair Rodriguez does a hell of a lot more flashy stuff. He's a similar sort of build and a similar sort of style, you could say, not massively, but there's a slight similarities there. Weight obviously similar. Reach, leg reach, it all favours him. Significant strikes landed. Both of them have incredibly high numbers per minute, 3.46 and 4.14. Accuracy, again, similar. The absorb and the defense is both, again, quite similar. Takedown average. Now, again, we see Yair Rodriguez is 1.45, but I think the wrestling and grappling game will favour Frankie Edgar absolutely ridiculously in this fight. I think Yair Rodriguez will try and keep it standing up, and Frankie Edgar will try and take him down, actually, and maybe just try and dominate him on the ground. I think Frankie Edgar will be able to get a takedown, but obviously, if Yair Rodriguez can do something good on the feet and maybe light him up a bit on the feet with some kicks and good punches, it could make for an incredibly interesting fight. And if Yair Rodriguez wins, as I mentioned, his name will be sent to the rafters and become a overnight star. Let's go into Demian Maia, Jorge Masvidal. Now, this fight actually received a little bit of speculation because a lot of people didn't think it should happen. Where we have Demian Maia, who's been crying almost, and a lot of people have been crying for him for a title shot against Tyron Woodley or Robbie Lawler, whoever the champion is at the time in the welterweight division. He's been basically crying for this for so damn long, and he hasn't got it. This guy is one of the most respectful, also one of the oldest sort of people in the UFC, but he's incredibly respectful, and he's got that very sort of traditional martial arts. In his case, it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's got that traditional martial arts sort of style to him where he's incredibly humble, that type of person. And not to mention, he maybe is the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist in the UFC right now. Him and Jacare Souza, probably they go back and forward with a few others mentioned, like Wilson Hayes, Augustus Mendes, those sort of people. But Demian Maia is definitely up there, probably in the top 2, to be honest, of Jiu-Jitsu artists in the UFC. So now if we go on to his record, again, he's got some losses, but he's beaten, again, some of the best people. And as of recent, Alexander Yakovlev, Ryan LaFleur, Neil Magny, Gunnar Nelson, Matt Brown, Carlos Condit. He does it incredibly well. And there was a ridiculous stat. I'm not too sure. This isn't exact, but it was in the past 5 fights he has absorbed. It was something like 20 punches in total. It was a ridiculous stat to have. I don't have it actually on hand at the moment. But basically, he'll try and take someone down. His boxing's gotten a lot better, and so is his wrestling, to be honest. But he'll try and take someone down, and if he gets them down, then you can almost say it's not done, but it is more than likely done, simply because his jiu-jitsu is just so damn phenomenal. These people can't get up. It is almost like they're drowning. So watch out for that with Demian Maia. On to his opponent, Jorge Masvidal, which is here, not Jessica Andrade. Jorge Masvidal. Again, some people say that this gentleman has the best boxing in the UFC. I'm not 100% sure if that's true, but it is definitely up there. He started off with MMA, but then he's also had a professional boxing career of, I believe, maybe 1 fight or something. So he's done incredibly well. And again, he's 32 years old, so he's not exactly the youngest, but he looks phenomenal. And as of recently, his most recent win against Donald Cerrone was one of the most dominant sort of wins on Donald Cerrone we've seen in a long time. Now, a lot of people say that he may not have won if Donald Cerrone was at its full health. Donald Cerrone fighting after maybe a month before he fought Matt Brown, I believe. So it's up for speculation, but the dominance he put over Donald Cerrone was unbelievable. With a TKO previously over Jake Ellenberger, decision over Ross Pearson. Now, the sort of controversy he gets, which I believe Dana White actually said, the president of the UFC, he basically said that when Jorge Masvidal is on and he's dedicated and training well, he's one of the best in the UFC. But when he isn't, and when he lacks his motivation, then he is one of the worst. So he loses fights which he could win just by not kind of pushing himself to the limit as such. So that will be something to look out for. But I think where this is almost a #1 contender spot, he's fighting Damian Maia, who I believe may be the #1 contender next for the welterweight title. This is going to be maybe the biggest fight of his career. So this is probably the most motivating fight of his career as well. Being able to take someone like Damian Maia out and basically just send himself to a straight title shot straight away after if he wins this. So it's a very, very interesting fight to look at here. And if I was Damian Maia, I personally would not take this fight. But he obviously has because he wanted to stay active. So let's go into their records. As you can see, both are incredibly experienced. It speaks for itself. Quite a good KO, TKO rate from Jorge Masvidal, 38%. Submissions, Damian Maia wins half of his fights for submission, which is ridiculous. Decisions, Masvidal goes to decisions. Height favours Damian Maia slightly. The reach favours Masvidal slightly. Leg reach is slightly Damian Maia. Again, all quite similar, but I assume Damian Maia is going to be throwing kicks anyway. Significant strikes landed per minute. Jorge Masvidal engulfs Damian Maia in the strike department, mainly because that is what he does. He will try and keep it on the standing and basically throw some incredibly good boxing. He has very, very good kicks as well. Some kind of flashy kicks as well. It's quite nice to see. But he's a great strike rate, a very good accuracy, and he does absorb a fair few. I think he's almost one of those warrior sort of people that will stand and trade with the person until one of them kind of goes down. So he's got a chin. That can be said. He can take a punch relatively well. So now he has a good defense, and then so does Damian Maia, again relatively similar. He also doesn't absorb too many strikes. Takedown average, Damian Maia favours this. Takedown accuracy, Damian Maia's wrestling isn't statistically the best. He's always been known as a jiu-jitsu artist, and jiu-jitsu artists are always known for not having the best wrestling to actually get the takedown to get to the ground. But his wrestling has got a hell of a lot better. He's got this almost quite cool chain wrestling sort of style now, where he goes from move to move and eventually gets them to the ground. So Masvidal has a very good takedown defense, which is probably going to be maybe one of the most important things to this fight, because this submission average means nothing in this situation where we have such a high level like Damian Maia versus Masvidal. So the most important stat I think of this fight is going to be takedowns defended. If Masvidal can stop the takedown from Damian Maia, then it could be a very, very good night for Masvidal, and he probably will actually light him up on the feet with quite a few punches and kicks. But the other side is if Damian Maia can get the takedown, then it could be an incredibly short night for Jorge Masvidal, where his jiu-jitsu is bloody phenomenal. It's ridiculous. So let's move on to the first of two title fights, something I'm incredibly excited for. Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Jessica Andrade. Now, we have Joanna Jędrzejczyk we'll go Jessica Andrade first as the challenger. She's quite young, 25 years old, but she's almost, I wouldn't say a knockout artist, but she's known for having some incredibly heavy, sort of strong hands. And she's also a very, very good jiu-jitsu artist as well. We've got a purple belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but obviously she is incredibly good. Sometimes they're above their rank as such, and even a purple or a brown belts can still be incredibly good. So coming off 3 wins, Jessica Penn, Joanne Calderwood, and Angela Hill. So now, as you can see, she has quite a few TKOs on her record. So normally when we see female fighters, no offense to them, but we don't actually see too many TKOs. So obviously Jessica Andrade has kind of shown she has quite a few TKOs to her. The most recent win over Angela Hill, though, which gives me a little bit of doubt, simply because Angela Hill, she kind of hit her with a hell of a lot of punches, and Angela Hill's chin stood up to it. So I'm thinking if Joanna Jędrzejczyk can stand up to this onslaught of a hell of a lot of, well, maybe a few punches in the first round or two where she's quite explosive, then I think she may be able to weather the storm to then push through and win the fight almost unanimously, with like what Angela Hill lost by unanimous decision. But Jędrzejczyk is a hell of a lot better than Angela Hill, unfortunately to say. So it'll be a lot harder. Now this woman, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, is one of my favourite pound-for-pound fighters in the UFC. She is some of the best Muay Thai in the UFC, not just for women, but for the UFC. She's a multiple-time Muay Thai champion, and she is absolutely phenomenal. So we'll look into her record. She is undefeated, and some very, very good wins over the likes of, well, Carlos Esparza. She's beat Claudia Gadelha twice, Valerie Letourneau, who's just gone to Bellator now, Jessica Penn, Karolina Kowalkiewicz. They're very, very, very good wins. So she's shown numerous times to her grit, her grind. She takes punches, she comes back from it, she loses the first 2 rounds and will win the next 3 unanimously. She's done incredibly well. This fight over Karolina, this is one of the first times she basically got rocked, to be honest. She took quite a big punch, and from that, she kind of got rocked, and people thought she may actually be finished by Carolina. But again, she weathered the storm and she pushed through and grinded it out. So now the only difference that may be is if Jessica Andrade can rock Joanna if early on, or maybe mid rounds, then she could put on maybe a bigger sort of onslaught with more powerful punches and maybe able to put Joanna away. That is, I think, the only way I can see her winning this fight, Jessica Andrade, or maybe possibly a submission if she takes to the ground, or maybe if she lands a very, very big punch, it goes to the ground and then she submits her while Joanna is dazed. Other than that, I think Miocic will win this one. I think she's too good to lose this. She's had fights against similar people with Claudia Gadelha, and Carla Esparza, where their takedowns are one of the most predominant, a big sort of thing. They're good wrestlers. They have some heavy hands and they're good wrestlers, some good jiu-jitsu. And she's beaten both of them. She gets taken down in the early rounds, Joanna does. And then she eventually just gets back up and just starts doing some of the best combos you've seen in MMA on these people's faces. So I think she'll win this, especially now she's training out of American Top Team. This could actually be her first fight training out of American Top Team. Don't quote me on that, because she may have fought Carolina from there as well. But she must have upped her game ridiculous amounts now, training out of a really, really good camp. So we'll look into the actual matchup a little bit. Poland versus Brazil, 13-0 versus 16-5. 31%. Submissions, obviously, Jessica Andrade takes a little bit. As mentioned, she is quite a good submission artist. Joanna, when it goes to decisions, she will pretty much always win. As mentioned, she may lose the first or second round, both of them perhaps, but then she'll always kind of come back and win. So height, she has the advantage. Reach, she has the advantage. Leg reach is similar. Well, the same. Significant strikes landed per minute. Now, both of them are absolutely incredibly high. Jessica Andrade's is also ridiculously high as well, with a better accuracy. So it's quite an interesting matchup. Standing, it could actually be quite interesting. I think Joanna will take it, but it is quite an interesting sort of matchup. Andrade does absorb a significant amount more, and then her defense is relatively lower than Joanna's. Takedown average, as mentioned, the grit and the grind of Andrade. She's a good wrestler as well. She will take people down. She does it with a good amount of ease, 62%. The takedown defense of Joanna is absolutely phenomenal, as shown in the Claudia Gadelha fight. She got taken down. She did get taken down, but then she stood back up relatively quickly, and a lot of the time towards the end of the fight she couldn't get taken down. So she is maybe one of the most all-round complete fighters in the UFC, and she is up there in the pound-for-pound list. So look out for that. I think Joanna will win this quite unanimously, if not by finish. We are on to the main event of this card now. One of the best fights, and we're going to go through the actual comparison first. So we have Stipe Miocic versus Junior Dos Santos, USA versus Brazil. 16-2 versus 18-4. Both have an incredibly high KO TKO rate. Submissions, decisions, these guys don't really submit or decide to go to decisions. They try and finish fights every single time. So we have the reach advantage slightly to Miocic's favour, leg reach to Dos Santos' favour. Significant strikes, both incredibly high, 5 versus 4.89. Accuracy similar, absorbed similar, defense similar. Grappling, Miocic kind of takes it because he is an NCAA Division 1 wrestler, but I doubt he's going to use that unless he wants to try and surprise Junior Dos Santos with it. I doubt he's going to use it. Both have very good takedown defense as well. Moving into the actual records, we have Junior Dos Santos first. Now these guys are not small. We have 6'4", 240 pounds, 109 kg. These guys are absolutely huge animals. So the kind of the most sought after title is the heavyweight. Like if you say you are the UFC heavyweight champion, you are probably the baddest man on the planet. No one can do anything to you, to be honest. So it's going into their records. Junior Dos Santos, again, he's fought everyone. He's KO'd Cain Velasquez. That says it all. Cain Velasquez, in my opinion, the best heavyweight maybe ever to live. He's up there in that category, and he KO'd him. Obviously lost to him twice afterwards, but he did KO him. And beating Stipe and Miocic in their first matchup, which is one of the important things. This was one of the best sort of fights that we saw at the time. He had pretty much he basically dominated, to be honest. This was one of the most interesting sort of fights to see. And not dominated, I didn't mean to say that. He basically showed that he has that grit and grind. This was so back and forward that these two were just trading, and I believe it must have won fight of the night. Yeah, so this fight was absolutely phenomenal. So basically everyone is hoping this can be the rematch that we all expect. So he's lost to Alistair Overeem, and he beat Ben Rothwell incredibly unanimously as well. Stipe Miocic, again, definitely not a small person, 6'4", 112 kg on these statistics. He's a slight reach advantage over Junior Dos Santos. With he's only lost to Stefan Struve and Junior Dos Santos. Struve, I think, was quite a lucky sort of one, and Dos Santos, again, fight of the night. That could have gone either. Well, I think it could have gone either way. I'm not sure if it was unanimous. I think it should have been a split decision. Go and watch it. It's on YouTube, I'm sure. But he has wins over Roy Nelson, Maldonado, Gonzaga, Mark Hunt he's TKO'd, Arlovsky he's TKO'd, KO'd Verdum, and KO'd Overeem. He's one of the best champions we've seen in a long time, and he could remain champion for a hell of a long time as well. So this is going to be one of the toughest tests he's had, mainly mentally as well, because he has actually lost to the person that he is fighting. So keep an eye out for that one. This could be fight of the night, as well as a hell of a lot of other ones. I'll do my small amount of my sort of picks of the night. I think fight of the night, I think there's going to be two, even though he may not give two. I think look out for Stipe Miocic, Junior Dos Santos, and Frankie Edgar, Rodriguez. They could be fights of the night. Obviously, Miocic, Andrade, and Maya, and so that Eddie Alvarez doesn't pour it. This card is ridiculous, so I can't really pick, to be honest. Performances of the night, I'm going to go with Joanna Jacek. I'm going to also go with Damian Maya. And then I'm going to throw in also Rodriguez. For some reason, I'm just going to say he gets the upset here. Going very quickly into odds, we have some quite interesting odds, to be honest. We have in England we have Jorge Masvidal is actually the favourite, and Damian Maya is the underdog. So that could be worth betting on if you're interested in that. Rodriguez could pull off an upset. This is his hardest test as mentioned, but the upset is always there and the odds are pretty good for him. Cejudo, Sergio Pettis, I probably wouldn't touch, to be honest. Jacek, Andrade can always win. Again, she's quite good odds, so if you're looking for quite a good bet, you could do it. And then Junior Dos Santos has some good odds as well, simply because, again, he's already beaten Stipe Miocic. Maybe he knows how to beat him. So it could be a good night for him. Again, this is probably a battle of boxing. We'll probably see a hell of a lot of boxing between those two. I'm sorry for this video being incredibly long, guys. If you've made it this far through the video, then thank you so much. I can't imagine too many of you will, but it is a long one, but I couldn't really skip out on this video, simply because this card is one of the best of the year so far, and could be the best of the year for a long time. So I hope you enjoyed it, guys. And again, I'm sorry for the length of it, and I'll be looking forward to doing my review on the Sunday, most likely. So as always, guys, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let's hit the 250 mark as soon as possible. As always, I've been LordKing, so thank you very much.